Dr. Gao, welcome to Money Talks.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the GDP first. Nomura predicts that China's GDP is to expand by 9% in 2021. Now, that's pretty high. We've seen a lot of 8% estimates. What is the major driver behind the 9% growth?
First, we have relatively low base this year. The pandemic hit the economy very hard in the first half of this year. So we have relatively low base of comparison. Second, we think there's still areas of improvement in the future. That means there's more room to recover. First is the service part of the economy. It was severely affected by the pandemic, still to some extent limited by this lingering effect of the COVID-19. We're talking about travel, we're talking about dining and so on, and they have more room to improve. And lastly, I think very importantly as well, is we expect global recovery next year. Once we have this widespread vaccination in the first of next year, we think in the second half next year, there will be stronger recovery globally, which will also help China's economy as well.
Now, in the report, you wrote about 3 new factors that will influence China's economic structure. On top of that is the demand and supply in the post-COVID-19 era. Now, can you please expand on that a little bit and what sectors are to benefit most from that?
Now, COVID-19 actually brought some new twists to these structural trends. It's a very severe shock to both demand and supply. On the supply side, we see higher concentration in a lot of industries, simply because a lot of weaker firms were, eliminated to some extent. So higher concentration on supply side. Then on the demand side, we see activities move online, not just consumer purchases, but also business transactions. These tend to favor those large, strong players with strong brands or known qualities. On top of this, there's also international aspect of that. I think COVID actually enlarged China's role as a global supplier, simply because China started recovery early. We see surge in exports of, say, electrical equipment, electronics, and so on. A lot of that has to do with working from home.
Bicycles too.
Yeah. I think these should have some stickiness going forward, even as pandemic recedes. They will help China's manufacturing, especially in the more advanced area.
Of course, a buzzword in China's economy is demand-side reform. Of course, we first heard about that in China's Politburo meeting. Now, what is going to push the shift from supply side to demand side?
I think it's part of a broader effort to continue to optimize or modernize Chinese economy. We had this supply side reform in the past few years, mainly to address overcapacity issues. Now, there's also efficiency issues related to demand side. For example, one can ask whether it's a good policy to continue to invest in traditional infrastructure, roads, bridges, or spend more on research and development in sort of technology-intensive sectors? Or should we promote sort of a higher share of consumption in economic growth, and how do we achieve that? I think we're going to get a lot of clarity on specifics, but I think it's about efficiency. I think certainly policy can be used as a tool to influence demand structure.
Another buzzword we often hear is the dual circulation. What is the relationship between the demand side reform and dual circulation?
That goes under this internal circulation in this dual circulation framework. I think China is pivoting a little bit inward, relying more on domestic demand as a driver for growth. So that's part of that. But I think international circulation is also very important. Trade and investment in large Chinese companies, global market, and also expose them to international competition.
You mentioned trade. Of course, we have to talk about the RCEP. How do you think that is going to affect China's trade in the future? And what is that going to do for China's currency, the RMB's internationalization?
RCEP is a big deal. We're talking about 15 countries. a third of world population, 30% of GDP and so on. I think more importantly, there's a lot of complementarity between countries in this agreement. We have some countries are more developed, we have countries with rich resources and so on. So I think that will promote better resource allocation, better efficiency as well. And the other thing I should also say is we are close to each other, and naturally they will trade more. So once you remove barriers of trade, I think the trade relationship will deepen. Now in terms of RMB, obviously more trade, more investment is going to lead to more use of the currency. Then I think we also have this another area of development in terms of market opening, financial markets. So together these two, trade and financial opening, I think it will be very effective in terms of RMB internationalization.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gao. It seems like next year is going to be a better one than this one.
We hope so.
Thank you.